Well, hello there, and welcome to the library. This is Mrs. Beckerer, and today we're going to continue doing some research. We're in the middle phase of research. We've already found our information using books, databases, and websites. Today we're in the using phase of research, and pretty soon we'll start on the sharing part where we create something cool with what we found. But today we're in that middle section about using information, and there are lots of ways we can do that. We can use sticky notes and Post-its. We can use highlighters. And today we're going to talk about some skills we can use to take those things and make them our own. 3 ways to do this are paraphrasing, summarizing, and quotes. So let's look at those today. As you know from before, if you copy and paste stuff straight from a resource, it's basically stealing their work. The fancy name for that is plagiarism. And basically, it's when you call somebody else's ideas your own. That's breaking what's called copyright, which means that when you create something, you own it. And other people have to give you credit if they're going to use it, unless you've given them permission to use it. When you take somebody's words without quoting or paraphrasing, which is putting it in your own words, or summarizing, which means just giving the high points, then you're breaking the rules or cheating, and that can land you in writer's jail. Legally, they could sue you and win a bunch of money, or they could give you a 0 for your assignment as a student. It's important you protect yourself by putting things in your own words and giving credit where it's due. The 3 ways to protect yourself from this are quoting, paraphrasing, and summarizing. Let's define what these 3 things are. Let's start with quotes. Quotes are what you use if you just can't put it in your own words and you really want the original words. You have to say who it was who said it and then use quotation marks. So, according to this person, quote, whatever you want to say, end quote. Quotes are okay to use in small doses, but you can't have your whole paper be quotes. Otherwise, you're just copying somebody else's idea, but you still aren't making something new or making it your own voice and your own personality. It's kind of like making soup. Even if yours is the same soup as somebody else's, your ingredients have to be slightly different. If you add too many quotes into the soup, it's like adding too much salt. It makes the soup taste bad. So use quotes sparingly, just once in a while. The next 2 things we'll talk about are paraphrasing and summarizing. These are skills to continue the research process. These are part of the note-taking process, and they allow us to take information we found, organize it, and restate it into a new product with our own words. Paraphrasing is another kind of summarizing. Paraphrasing is similar, but a little different. You use it if you don't want to plagiarize, you don't want to use too many quotes, and you want it to be in your own voice. Let's practice. Here's an example from a fiction text. We do this all the time when we read stories. This is a page from a story, and let's practice. The grocery man stomped out onto the sidewalk and yelled, "Where is that delivery truck? I need my tomatoes." He ran into a lady coming out of the clothes store and knocked her boxes into his fruit stand. Now, if I want to paraphrase, I remove that, and I'll put it in my own words. I think this was about a guy who was in a hurry, and he bumped into a lady at the grocery store and knocked over a bunch of fruit. That is a paraphrase. I put it in my own words, but that's basically the gist of what I read. When we want to paraphrase, first we read the text, then we remove that text, and third, we re-say it in our own way. Let's try another example. In gym class the next day, William did his best somersault ever, and when he stood up, his tooth was sitting on his tongue. William took it out and looked at it. It was so tiny. Okay, so I've read the text. Now I'm removing it, and I'm going to re-say it. So if I was going to re-say what that page in that story was about, I would just say it was a kid playing on the playground, and he lost his tooth. That's the gist of what happened. Now let's try a nonfiction example. This is more like what we do when we're doing research. This particular kid is learning about wolves. Wolves are members of a group called dogs. They have keen sight, hearing, and smell. They have 42 strong, sharp teeth. Wolves are excellent hunters, and they hunt their prey in packs. They let each other know what is happening by howling loudly. Okay, so I've read it, and now I remove the text, and I'm going to re-say the things that stood out to me. I could say wolves travel in big groups, and they're part of the dog family. And if they want to talk to each other, they howl and make noise. All of these were things that were in the original text, but you'll notice I put it in my own words and I mixed it up. And maybe I do want to repeat some of the original items from the paragraph. That's okay, as long as I'm not repeating it word for word. Here's another one about whales. Whales are large mammals that live in the ocean. They breathe air through blowholes. Their sleek, streamlined bodies move easily through the water. They give birth to calves that can see and swim straight away. Now I remove the text and I re-say it. I might say something about whales are big animals. I might say that they have long, slick bodies. In the original text, they used sleek, streamlined bodies. But I don't really talk like that. So I just said they're long and slimy, I think. That might be a word I would use. Okay, whales have babies that can see and hear right away. Nobody has to teach them. That's my own words too. The original text didn't say it quite like that, but it's basically the same information. And that is okay when I'm paraphrasing. This kid is learning about Chicago. That's his topic or heading. And inside his paper, he wants to talk about the Willis Tower as a subtopic. Here he printed an article or a website. He reads through it, and as he does, he might use a highlighter to highlight some facts and things he finds interesting enough that he wants to repeat. As soon as he's done reading it, he'll remove the text and then restate it. Maybe he wants to mention that it's one of the biggest buildings in the Western Hemisphere. Or maybe he wants to mention that it has 1450 feet. Or all of it is okay to use those facts as long as we mix them up and make them our own. Now let's change gears and talk about summarizing. When we summarize, we reduce information down to the essential ideas or the main ideas. We find ideas that support facts and opinions in our writing. We do this if we want to offer an overview of the topic, or we want to combine information from lots of sources, like a book and a database and a website, and mash them up into one. You will determine the main ideas from a single source you can summarize, or you don't want to use too many quotes in paraphrasing. You can mix it up by summarizing. A summary is just a short retelling of a story. You can summarize every time you tell your friends about your vacation or a movie you just saw. You can't tell everything, so you just tell what's important, the main idea and a few little details. Usually you can do this in just a few sentences. It's kind of like going to the movies. Before the movie, you see a preview of new movies about to come out. The preview doesn't play the whole 2-hour movie. It only shows 5 minutes of highlights, and that is a summary. When you search in Google and there's a couple of sentences underneath each link, that's not the whole website. It's just a summary. And when you look up books in the library catalog and you see the book's title, near it there are a couple of sentences that tell you about the book, but not the whole thing. It's just a summary. When we summarize, we look for the main idea, we identify supporting details, we disregard unimportant information, things that don't really matter. We analyze for redundant information. That means look for repeats. And we simplify, categorize, and label important information we want to use. So let's practice summarizing. Sarah went to the mall over the weekend. She ran into an old friend, Chris, who'd moved away last year. They had lunch together, and Sarah discovers that Chris's family will be moving back to town next month, so he'll be going to her school again. Chris says he hopes he'll be able to get back on the school soccer team since he's on a winning team where he's been living. If I was going to summarize that, I might say something like, guess who I ran into at the mall? Guess who's coming back to town? It's Chris, and he's probably going to play on our soccer team. That's pretty much the high points. She bumps into an old friend. He's coming back. He's going to play soccer. Check out this paragraph. This one is nonfiction. Archaeologists learn about the past by studying things ancient people left behind. The people can be grouped by the technology they used. Stone Age people used stone tools. Bronze Age people made metal tools. And a painting or carving can show people in carts. That's technology. Scraps of material and clues to how people use technology to make clothing. Written journals tell how people use technologies to make medicines from plants. If I was going to summarize this paragraph in one word, I would say it's about history. 2 keywords, and I'd say it's the history of technology. Their summary says, scientists find evidence of how people use technology during their lifetimes. Different technologies were used at different times in history to make tools, clothes, art, vehicles, and medicines. You'll notice they talked about technology in different periods of history, and they broke it down to 5 categories: tools, clothes, art, vehicles, and medicine. Those are the high points from the paragraph. So you see, when you're creating a new product and you're using the information you found, when you quote, paraphrase, and summarize, you can mix it up and cook a brand new recipe. Even though it's got a lot of the same ingredients, it becomes your own unique voice and your own unique product, which is what we want when we research. Okay, so this presentation is a mashup of resources which were originally found at Smart Exchange under the Creative Commons license and have been adapted and compiled into this Google slide presentation.